Twilight is a 2008 American romantic fantasy film directed by Catherine Hardwicke. The film is based on the massively successful debut novel of the same name written by author Stephenie Meyer, which was published in 2005 and became an instant phenomenon among young adult readers worldwide. The film belongs to the genres of romance, fantasy, and drama, carries a PG-13 rating, and has a total runtime of approximately 122 minutes. It was produced and distributed by Summit Entertainment, a studio that took a significant bet on the project and ended up launching one of the most profitable franchises in modern Hollywood history. Now, before we get into the film itself, it is important to understand where this story comes from and how it ended up on the big screen. Stephenie Meyer's novel Twilight was unlike anything in the vampire genre that had come before it. Meyer was not writing a horror story. She was not writing about monsters or darkness in the traditional sense. She was writing a deeply emotional, deeply personal love story that just happened to involve a vampire, and that distinction made all the difference in the world. The book resonated with millions of young readers because at its core, it was about longing, identity, and the kind of all-consuming love that makes you feel like you would give up everything just to be near one person. The path to bringing this story to the screen was not a simple one. The novel was initially optioned by MTV Films under Paramount Pictures, but the development process was troubled. Early script drafts strayed extremely far from the source material, turning Bella into a gun-wielding action heroine and changing the tone of the story completely. Author Stephenie Meyer was deeply unhappy with those early versions and has spoken publicly about how unrecognizable they were. After a change in studio leadership at Paramount, the project stalled entirely. Eventually, Summit Entertainment acquired the rights and started fresh, this time with a commitment to staying faithful to the spirit and emotional core of the novel. Melissa Rosenberg was brought in to write the screenplay, and she did so in the autumn of 2007, just before the Writers Guild of America strike began. Catherine Hardwicke, known for her raw and emotionally grounded directorial style, was chosen to helm the film. Stephenie Meyer herself was kept closely involved throughout the entire production process, visiting the set and offering input, which gave fans confidence that the adaptation was in good hands. Filming took place primarily in the state of Oregon, with additional photography in Washington state. The gray, overcast, and perpetually damp environment of the Pacific Northwest was essential to the visual identity of the film, perfectly matching the mood and atmosphere of the fictional town of Forks, Washington, where the story is set. Principal photography began in March 2008 and lasted approximately 44 days before wrapping in May 2008. Some additional footage and reshoots were completed in late August 2008, including key emotional scenes such as the meadow sequence, Edward playing the piano, and the bedroom kiss between Edward and Bella. Plot details. Now let us get into the full story of the film. This is where things really get interesting, and we are going to go through the plot in thorough detail so you understand every layer of what this film is doing. The story begins with Isabella Swan, who goes by Bella, a 17-year-old girl living in Phoenix, Arizona with her mother. When her mother remarries and wants to travel with her new husband, Bella makes the selfless decision to move to the small, rainy town of Forks, Washington to live with her father, Charlie Swan, who is the town's chief of police. Bella and Charlie have a loving but somewhat awkward relationship, as they are not accustomed to living together, and neither of them are particularly comfortable with open emotional expression. Forks is everything Phoenix is not. It is cold, gray, constantly overcast, and surrounded by dense forest. It is a world apart from the sunny life Bella is used to, and she arrives feeling like an outsider, just as she has always felt wherever she has gone. She enrolls at Forks High School, where she is immediately noticed by her classmates simply because she is new. She quickly makes a small group of friends, including the chatty and social Jessica, the kind and bookish Angela, and the friendly Eric. Despite being welcomed, Bella still feels that underlying sense of not quite belonging anywhere. It is at school where Bella first notices the Cullen family. They are a group of 5 extraordinarily beautiful, pale, and otherworldly teenagers who sit entirely apart from the rest of the student body in the cafeteria. They barely touch their food, they move with an almost unnatural grace, and they seem to exist in a world that is entirely their own. They are breathtaking to look at and deeply unsettling in their perfection. Among them is Edward Cullen, and the moment Bella lays eyes on him, something shifts inside her that she cannot explain. The two of them end up sitting next to each other in biology class, and Edward's reaction to Bella's presence is shocking. He recoils from her as though she causes him physical pain. He presses himself against the back of his chair, covers his mouth and nose, and looks at her with an expression that reads almost like fury. Bella is bewildered and deeply hurt. She has done nothing to this boy, and yet he clearly cannot stand to be near her. Edward then disappears from school entirely for several days, leaving Bella with no answers and even more questions. When Edward eventually returns, everything has changed. He approaches Bella with warmth, curiosity, and an almost magnetic pull toward her. He is charming, articulate, and unlike anyone she has ever spoken to before. He seems to know things about her without being told. He reads people around him with uncanny accuracy, and there is a sadness and a depth behind his eyes that Bella cannot stop thinking about. Their relationship begins to develop slowly, built on quiet moments, lingering glances, and conversations that feel weightier and more meaningful than anything Bella has experienced before. Then comes the moment that changes everything. In the school parking lot, a van driven by a student loses control on the icy ground and hurtles at full speed directly toward Bella. Before she can even process what is happening, Edward is there. He is across the parking lot 1 second and right beside her the next, stopping the van with his bare hand as though it weighs nothing, leaving a deep dent in the metal with his palm. He saves her life in a way that is physically impossible for any human being. And Bella knows it. From this moment forward, Bella becomes determined to find the truth about Edward Cullen. She researches, she observes, she asks questions, and during a visit to a beach with her school friends she meets Jacob Black, a teenage boy from the nearby Quileute Native American reservation who she has known since childhood. Jacob tells her the old legends of his tribe, legends that speak of cold ones, of vampires, of creatures that his ancestors made a treaty with long ago. And in those legends, Bella finds her answer. Edward Cullen is a vampire. He was born in 1901 in Chicago and was turned during the influenza epidemic of 1918 by Carlisle Cullen, a vampire who had devoted centuries to practicing medicine and saving human lives rather than taking them. Edward has not aged a single day since 1918. He is over a century old, trapped in the body of a 17-year-old, with all the emotions, memories, and experiences of more than 100 years of living. When Bella confronts Edward directly in the forest, he does not deny it. He demonstrates his abilities to her. He runs at superhuman speed, he climbs trees like gravity has no hold on him, and in an unforgettable sequence in a sunlit meadow, he steps into the light and his skin does not burn. Instead, it catches the light and sparkles like it is made of diamond. He tells her everything. He tells her what he is, what his family is, and he tells her what makes them different from other vampires. The Cullen family, under the guidance of the compassionate and morally driven Carlisle, has made the choice to survive entirely on animal blood rather than human blood. They refer to themselves, with quiet dark humor, as vegetarians. This choice has cost them enormously in terms of difficulty and restraint, but it is the foundation of who they are as a family, Edward also tells Bella something that makes their love story even more complicated. When he is near her, her scent is more powerful to him than any human he has ever encountered. She is, in vampire terminology, his singer, the one person whose blood calls to him more intensely than anything else in the world. Being near her requires a level of self-control from him that is extraordinary. Every moment he spends with Bella is a battle between his love for her and his most primal instincts as a vampire, and yet he chooses her, over and over again. Rather than running away in terror after learning all of this, Bella chooses to stay. She chooses Edward. She is not frightened of what he is. She is drawn to him even more deeply because of it, because she finally understands the weight he carries and the depth of feeling he has for her despite every reason to stay away. Their romance blossoms into something fierce and consuming. Edward introduces Bella to his family and takes her to the Cullen house, a stunning glass and wood structure deep in the forest. Esme, Edward's adoptive vampire mother, welcomes Bella warmly. Carlyle is measured, kind, and deeply respectful of Bella's choices. Emmett is boisterous and light-hearted, Alice is enthusiastic and immediately devoted to Bella, and Jasper is reserved but respectful. The only exception is Rosalie, who makes her disapproval clear. She sees Bella's presence as a risk and a disruption to the careful life the Cullens have built. The film takes a darker and more dangerous turn when 3 nomadic vampires arrive in Forks: James, Victoria, and Lauren. These are vampires who live the traditional way, hunting humans, moving frequently, and operating entirely on instinct and desire. James is something special among vampires. He is a tracker, a vampire whose unique gift is the ability to hunt and pursue a target with supernatural precision and obsessive focus. The moment James catches the scent of Bella at a baseball game the Cullens are playing in the forest during a thunderstorm, he locks onto her as his next prey. He is not simply hungry. He is excited by the challenge of taking something that the Cullen family is trying to protect. The entire Cullen family immediately rallies to protect Bella. They send her away from Forks with Edward's siblings Alice and Jasper, heading south to Phoenix in the hope that leaving will throw James off the trail. Charlie is told that Bella has left because of a fight, a lie that breaks both of their hearts, but is necessary for his safety. Meanwhile, Carlyle, Esme, Emmett, Rosalie, and Edward stay behind to deal with James directly. But James is not so easily deflected. In a devastating act of manipulation, James manages to get a message to Bella, using a recording of her mother's voice to make Bella believe her mother has been taken hostage and is being threatened. Bella, terrified for her mother's safety, slips away from Alice and Jasper and goes to meet James alone at her old childhood ballet studio in Phoenix. When she arrives, she discovers the truth. Her mother was never in danger. The recording James used was taken from an old home video. It was a trap, and Bella walked directly into it. James is cruel and sadistic. He beats Bella badly, breaks her leg, toys with her, and films the entire encounter. He then bites her wrist deeply, injecting vampire venom into her bloodstream, which will slowly begin the process of turning her. Just as James is about to deliver a killing blow, the Cullen family arrives. Edward reaches Bella first, and an intense fight breaks out. Emmett, Jasper, and Alice destroy James while Edward kneels over Bella, who is bleeding heavily and going into shock from the venom spreading through her body. Edward faces an impossible choice. The venom is in Bella's blood. To save her from turning into a vampire, he must suck the venom out of her wound, which means tasting her blood, the blood that calls to him more powerfully than any other human blood in the world. Every instinct he has, every primal force within him will be screaming at him not to stop once he starts. But he chooses her. He chooses her humanity. He drinks the venom from her wound and stops himself, pulling back in one of the most emotionally charged moments of the film. It is an act of love that costs him everything, and it is the moment that proves, beyond any doubt, that Edward Cullen is not defined by what he is but by what he chooses. Bella wakes up in a hospital, her mother at her side. Edward is there too, and their reunion is quiet and tender. The immediate danger is over. But Victoria, James's partner, escaped during the confrontation in the ballet studio, and her eyes burn with the promise of revenge. The film ends on a note that is equal parts hopeful and foreboding. Edward takes Bella to their school prom, and they share a slow dance under the lights. Bella tells Edward she wants to be with him forever, that she wants to become a vampire so that the gap between them, the mortality that separates them, will no longer exist. Edward refuses for now, pressing his lips to her neck in a gesture that is both tender and loaded with the tension of everything he is holding back. Across the venue, unseen by either of them, Victoria watches with cold, calculating fury. The story has only just begun. Now let us talk about the people who brought this story to life on screen, because the cast of Twilight is as fascinating to discuss as the film itself. Kristen Stewart plays Bella Swan, and she carries the entire weight of the film on her shoulders. Stewart was already a respected young actress before Twilight, having delivered strong performances in films like Panic Room and Into the Wild, but this role transformed her into a global star practically overnight. Her portrayal of Bella is deliberately quiet and internal. She does not perform emotions loudly. She holds them behind her eyes and in the stillness of her expression, which divided critics sharply but deeply resonated with fans who recognized Bella's introverted and self-contained nature from the books. Robert Pattinson plays Edward Cullen, and his casting is one of the great Hollywood stories of that era. His casting was announced to enormous backlash from fans of the books, who had their own deeply personal image of Edward and felt Pattinson did not match it. But Pattinson committed fully to the role. He read the novels. He was even given access to Stephenie Meyer's unfinished manuscript of Midnight Sun, which tells the Twilight story from Edward's perspective, so that he could understand his character's internal life in complete detail. Over time, fan reaction turned completely in his favor, and his portrayal of Edward became one of the defining performances of his early career, eventually leading him to roles in acclaimed art house films and ultimately to playing Bruce Wayne in The Batman. Billy Burke delivers one of the film's most quietly effective and underrated performances as Charlie Swan, Bella's father. He brings warmth, humor, and a touching awkwardness to the role that provides a grounding human counterbalance to all the supernatural drama surrounding him. Taylor Lautner plays Jacob Black, Bella's childhood friend from the Quileute Reservation. His role in this first film is relatively small, but it was enough to establish the character's warmth and his evident feelings for Bella, setting the stage for the enormous role he would play in the sequels. Peter Facinelli plays Dr. Carlisle Cullen, the patriarch of the vampire family, and brings a quiet authority and genuine compassion to the role. Elizabeth Reeser plays Esme Cullen with maternal warmth and grace. Nikki Reed plays Rosalie Hale with appropriate icy hostility. Kellen Lutz plays the physically imposing but good-natured Emmett Cullen. Ashley Greene is perfectly cast as the bright, perceptive, and intensely loyal Alice Cullen. Jackson Rathbone plays the empathic and quietly struggling Jasper Hale. On the antagonist's side, Kem Gigunde plays James with genuinely chilling menace and a predatory physicality that makes him a convincing and threatening villain. Rochelle Lefevre plays Victoria with a wild, feline intensity that promises far greater things to come in the sequels. Anna Kendrick appears in a supporting role as Jessica Stanley, Bella's socially savvy and entertainingly self-focused classmate, and she brings a natural comedic energy to every scene she is in. The screenplay was written by Melissa Rosenberg, adapted from Stephenie Meyer's novel. Catherine Hardwicke directed the film. The producers were Greg Moradian, Mark Morgan, and Wick Godfrey. Release date and box office. Twilight was released in North American theaters on November 21, 2008. It opened in approximately 3,419 theaters across the country and went on to become one of the most commercially successful films of that year. The film was made on a relatively modest budget of around $37 million, and it went on to earn approximately $393 million worldwide at the box office, making it an extraordinary financial success for Summit Entertainment, and instantly greenlit a sequel. The film was released in Australia on December 11, 2008, and subsequently rolled out across international markets. It was later released on DVD on March 21, 2009, which introduced the film to an even wider audience and drove further commercial success. The success of Twilight did not just justify sequels. It fundamentally changed how Hollywood viewed young adult source material. Prior to Twilight's success, studios were hesitant about adapting young adult novels for the big screen. After Twilight's enormous box office performance, the floodgates opened, and a wave of young adult adaptations followed throughout the early 2010s, from The Hunger Games to Divergent and beyond. The franchise that Twilight launched continued with 4 sequels: New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn Part 1, and Breaking Dawn Part 2. Trailer and RECPTIO. The official theatrical trailer for Twilight did exactly what a great trailer is supposed to do. It captured the atmosphere and emotional tone of the film without giving away the most critical plot details. It leaned into the romance, the mystery of Edward's nature, and the visual identity of the Pacific Northwest setting. When the trailer was released online, it generated millions of views almost instantly, which was a significant achievement in 2008, before social media had reached the levels of penetration it has today. The trailer showed glimpses of the meadow scene, Edward stopping the van, the Cullen family in their house, and enough of the central romance to make fans of the books deeply emotional and curious viewers genuinely intrigued. In terms of critical reception, the film was genuinely divisive. Some critics praised Catherine Hardwicke's atmospheric direction, the chemistry between Stewart and Pattinson, and the film's willingness to take the romance seriously rather than playing it for comedy or irony. Entertainment Weekly gave the film a B rating and specifically praised Hardwicke for creating what they described as a mood piece filled with stormy skies and emotional intensity. Other critics were far less generous, calling out the pacing, the performances, and the overall execution as falling short of the novel's emotional impact. USA Today was notably harsh in its review. But here is the thing about Twilight and critical reception: the audience did not care. Fans turned out in enormous numbers, multiple times in many cases, and the film's cultural footprint grew by the day. It became a genuine phenomenon of the late 2000s, one of those rare films that transcends critical opinion and becomes part of the broader cultural conversation simply by virtue of how deeply it connects with its audience. What makes Twilight endure as a film, regardless of its technical flaws, is the emotional sincerity at its center. It is a film that takes its love story completely seriously, and it asks you to do the same. Catherine Hardwicke approached the material with genuine respect for the feelings it was meant to represent, and that respect comes through in every frame. The performances, the cinematography, the haunting and beautiful soundtrack, and the sheer commitment of everyone involved in bringing Stephenie Meyer's world to life combined to create something that, for its audience, felt genuinely magical. Whether you consider Twilight a masterpiece or a guilty pleasure, there is no question that it earned its place in the history of cinema as a cultural moment that a generation of viewers will never forget. Chapter 1: A New Beginning in a Grey TOW. And the story of Twilight begins not with darkness or drama, but with a quiet act of selflessness. Isabella Swan, who has always gone by Bella, is a 17-year-old girl living in Phoenix, Arizona with her mother, Renee. Renee is warm, loving, free-spirited, and a little scattered, the kind of mother who feels more like a best friend than a parent. Bella has spent most of her life taking care of her mother in small ways, making sure bills are paid, meals are made, and that the household runs smoothly while Renee floats through life on instinct and feeling. It is a dynamic that has made Bella mature beyond her years, quiet, self-sufficient, and deeply internal in the way she processes the world around her. When Renee falls in love with Phil, a young minor league baseball player whose career requires constant travel, Bella sees the situation clearly. Her mother wants to travel with her new husband, but she feels guilty about uprooting Bella's life. So Bella makes the decision herself. She tells her mother she wants to go and live with her father in Forks, Washington. It is a completely selfless choice, and it is the first thing we learn about who Bella Swan really is. She gives up her warm, sunny life in Phoenix so that her mother can be happy, and she does it without complaint or fanfare. Forks, Washington is about as different from Phoenix as a place can be. It is a tiny town on the Olympic Peninsula, one of the rainiest places in the entire United States, perpetually wrapped in gray clouds, drizzle, and dense green forest that seems to press in from every direction. The sun rarely shows itself in Forks. The sky is almost always the color of old pewter, and the air smells of pine and rain and earth. For someone who grew up under the blazing Arizona sun, arriving in Forks feels like stepping into another world entirely, and not necessarily a welcoming one. Bella's father, Charlie Swan, is the chief of police in Forks. He is a quiet, unpretentious man who loves his daughter deeply but does not have the emotional vocabulary to express it easily. He and Renee divorced when Bella was very young, and Bella has spent summers with Charlie over the years, but living together full-time is new territory for both of them. Charlie tries his best. He has bought Bella a truck, an old rusted red thing that turns out to be surprisingly lovable, and he has done his best to make her room feel welcoming. But they are both people who communicate more through action than through words, and so they settle into a comfortable, slightly awkward routine without making too big a deal out of either the reunion or the strangeness of it. Bella enrolls at Forks High School, and on her very first day she is immediately the center of attention simply by virtue of being new. Forks is small enough that a new student is a genuine event. She meets a group of friendly classmates who welcome her readily: Jessica, who is talkative and socially sharp; Angela, who is gentle and thoughtful; Eric, who is eager and a little awkward in his enthusiasm to befriend her; and Mike, who takes an immediate romantic interest in her. They are kind people, and Bella appreciates their friendliness even as she feels, as she always has, slightly apart from everyone around her. Social ease has never come naturally to her. She observes more than she participates, thinks more than she speaks, and carries within her a persistent sense of not quite fitting the world she inhabits. It is in the school cafeteria on that first day that Bella first notices them. Chapter 2. The Cullens. 5 teenagers sit at a table at the far end of the cafeteria, positioned apart from everyone else as though by mutual unspoken agreement, both theirs and everyone else's. They are unlike anyone Bella has ever seen. Each of them is breathtakingly beautiful in a way that seems almost artificial, as though someone had taken the concept of physical perfection and made it flesh. They are pale, all of them, with a pallor that goes beyond simply fair skin into something that looks almost luminous. They move with a grace and precision that does not look entirely natural, each gesture considered and fluid in a way that human beings simply are not. And they are utterly, completely still in the way that people who are deeply aware of themselves are still, not fidgeting, not shifting, just existing with a composure that seems almost preternatural. Jessica is happy to fill Bella in on who they are. The large, dark-haired, powerfully built boy is Emmett. The blonde girl beside him, stunning in a way that almost seems aggressive, is Rosalie. The slender, honey blonde boy with the careful posture and the expression of someone perpetually bracing for something is Jasper. The small, dark-haired girl with the pixie cut and the bright, alert eyes that seem to be constantly absorbing everything around her is Alice. And the last one, sitting slightly apart even from the others, looking out the window with an expression of quiet and ancient contemplation, is Edward. Edward Cullen is the most striking of all of them, and that is saying something given the company he keeps. He is tall, with bronze-brown hair that falls across his forehead in a way that looks careless but somehow perfect. His features are sharply defined, his skin so pale it almost seems to reflect light rather than absorb it, and his eyes, when he finally turns them toward the room, are an unusual shade of gold. He carries himself with the kind of quiet authority that does not announce itself but simply exists, like gravity. He looks, Bella thinks, like someone who has lived a great deal more than a teenager should have lived. Jessica explains that the Cullens are the adopted children of Dr. Carlisle Cullen and his wife Esme, a couple who moved to Forks a few years ago. They keep very much to themselves. They do not mix with the other students in any meaningful way, though they are not unkind, simply distant, as though they inhabit a frequency that regular people cannot quite tune into. They are, Jessica admits, a little strange, but the kind of strange that makes you want to look at them rather than look away. Bella looks. And then Edward Cullen turns his golden eyes across the cafeteria, and for just a moment, he looks directly at her. Chapter 3. The Biology class. The real beginning of everything happens in biology class. The only available seat in the room is the one next to Edward Cullen, and as Bella makes her way toward it, she notices the moment Edward registers her presence. It is not subtle. He goes absolutely rigid. His jaw tightens, his hands grip the edge of the lab table hard enough to whiten his already pale knuckles, and he presses himself as far away from her as the chair will allow. He turns his face away and covers his mouth and nose with his hand, and the expression on his face when Bella catches a glimpse of it is not simply discomfort. It is something closer to agony, mixed with something darker, something that looks, if she had to name it, like fury. Bella is completely baffled. She has done nothing to this person. She has never spoken a word to him. She arrived, she sat down, and he has reacted as though her very existence is an offense against him. The class is one of the longest hours of Bella's life. Edward sits there, rigid and clearly battling something internal, never once looking at her, barely breathing, and the moment the bell rings he is out of the room before anyone else has gathered their things. Bella is upset, confused, and a little angry. She considers asking to transfer out of the class, and she even walks to the front office to inquire about a schedule change. But before she can make the request, Edward Cullen walks into the same office, and the change in him from 1 hour ago is so dramatic it stops her cold. He is composed, he is standing normally, and when he sees her, he looks at her with an expression that is not hostile but is deeply curious and almost intent. He seems to see her very clearly, and that quality of being truly seen by someone is something Bella is not accustomed to. Edward leaves. Bella decides not to transfer out of the class. The following day, Edward is not at school. Nor the day after that. He is absent for an entire week, and during that week Bella finds herself thinking about him far more than she would like to admit. When he finally returns, he is transformed. He slides into the seat beside her in biology class and introduces himself with a warmth and ease that makes everything that came before seem like it happened in a different lifetime. He is funny and sharp and perceptive, and he talks to her as though she is the most interesting person in the room, which for Bella, who has spent most of her life feeling slightly invisible, is a disorienting and intoxicating experience. Something is beginning between them. Either of them can explain it or stop it. Chapter 4. The parking lot. It is an ordinary morning in the school parking lot. Bella is walking between the rows of cars, her thoughts elsewhere, when she hears the squeal of tires on ice and looks up to see a full-sized van sliding completely out of control directly toward her. There is no time to move. There is barely time to register what is happening before the impact should arrive, but it does not arrive. Instead, something arrives first. Edward Cullen is there, suddenly and impossibly, when a fraction of a second ago he was on the other side of the parking lot getting out of his own car. He is beside her so fast that the movement itself is invisible. He catches the van with one hand, his palm pressed flat against the metal, and it stops. A van that weighs several thousand pounds, moving fast enough to be fatal, stopped by one hand pressed against it. The metal of the van crumples and dents around Edward's hand like it is made of foil rather than steel. He holds the van in place with no visible effort, looks at Bella with those gold eyes, and in that instant Bella understands on some deep, wordless level that what she is looking at is not possible. In the chaos that follows, with students gathering and paramedics arriving and everyone checking that Bella is okay, Edward disappears into the crowd. Bella finds herself on a stretcher, physically unharmed but with her mind working furiously. She saw what happened. She saw exactly where Edward was standing before the van lost control. She saw him move. She felt his cold hand on her arm when he stopped the van. She knows what is in front of her, an impossibility. And she is not the kind of person who can let an impossibility go unexplained. At the hospital, where Charlie has rushed to be with her and where Dr. Carlisle Cullen, Edward's adoptive father, is the attending physician, Bella tries to talk to Edward about what happened. He deflects with practiced ease, offering explanations that do not hold up under any real scrutiny. He was closer than she thought. The adrenaline made things seem strange. The accident was disorienting for everyone. Bella looks at him steadily, and tells him quietly that she knows what she saw. Edward looks back at her with an expression that is impossible to read, and says nothing more. Chapter 5. Jacob's story. Time passes, and Bella and Edward begin to exist in each other's orbit in a way that is charged with something neither of them is naming yet. They talk in biology class. He watches her with that same quality of intense, total attention. She thinks about him constantly and is not entirely comfortable with how much she thinks about him. A school trip to the beach at La Push, which lies within the boundaries of the Quileute Native American Reservation, brings Bella into contact with someone from her past. Jacob Black is the teenage son of Billy Black, an old friend of Charlie's and a member of the Quileute tribe. Jacob is warm and open and easy in a way that is the precise opposite of Edward's complexity and mystery. He and Bella used to play together as children, and there is a natural comfort between them that exists without effort. They walk along the beach together and talk, and Bella, who has been trying to gather information about the Cullens for weeks without success, finds herself steering the conversation toward them. She asks Jacob about the Cullen family. Jacob lowers his voice slightly, as if by instinct, and tells her that the Quileute people have an old treaty with the Cullens, a treaty that goes back generations. He tells her the old stories of his tribe, stories about the Cold Ones, about creatures who look like men but are not, who do not age or die, who must be invited before they can cross onto Quileute land. He tells her these stories with the slightly self-conscious air of someone who is not sure whether to believe the legends he is repeating, but who is repeating them faithfully nonetheless. Bella listens to every word. That evening, alone in her room, she researches online. She follows the threads of Jacob's stories into old folklore databases and obscure anthropological records. And there, In the language of myths and legends from cultures all across the world, she finds the word she has been circling toward without knowing it: vampire. Chapter 6. The truth in the forest. Bella does not run from what she has discovered. She does not convince herself that she must be wrong or that there is a rational explanation she has simply not thought of yet. She is not built that way. She follows the truth wherever it goes, even when it goes somewhere impossible, and so the next time she is alone with Edward, she confronts him directly. She takes him to a forest trail near Forks and tells him, calmly and clearly, what she believes he is. She watches his face as she speaks. He does not deny it. He asks her instead how she feels about what she is saying, whether she is frightened. She tells him she is not frightened of him. She is simply certain. Edward then does something extraordinary. He takes her to a meadow, a clearing in the dense forest where the sun occasionally breaks through the cloud cover and falls on the ground in wide, warm pools of light. He steps into the sunlight, and what happens to him there is one of the most visually arresting moments in the entire film. His skin does not blister or burn. It does not smoke or smolder. Instead, it catches the light and fractures it into thousands of tiny prismatic points, as though his skin is made of countless microscopic diamonds. He sparkles. He stands in the sunlight and glitters with a cold and otherworldly beauty, and he looks at Bella with an expression that holds centuries of solitude and longing in it. He tells her everything. He was born in Chicago in 1901. He was 17 years old when the influenza epidemic of 1918 swept through the city, and he was dying in a hospital ward when Cullen, himself a vampire of nearly 4 centuries, chose to transform him rather than let him die. Edward did not have a choice in what he became. He woke up as something other than human, and he has been 17 years old ever since, trapped in that age while the world around him changed century by century. He tells her about his ability. Every vampire has a gift of some kind, a supernatural ability that emerges when they are transformed, usually an amplification of a quality they possessed in life. Edward's gift is the ability to hear thoughts. He can hear the internal monologue of every human and vampire around him as clearly as if they were speaking aloud. Every person he has ever met has been an open book to him, their thoughts broadcasting into his mind whether he wants to hear them or not. Every person, that is, except Bella. Her mind is completely silent to him. He hears nothing from her, and the experience of encountering someone he cannot read, after more than a century of involuntary access to everyone's innermost thoughts, is both deeply unsettling and profoundly compelling. She is the only mystery he has encountered in over 100 years of existence. He tells her why he reacted the way he did in biology class. Her blood, specifically the scent of her blood, is more powerfully appealing to him than the blood of any human he has ever encountered in his long existence. There is a term among vampires for this phenomenon. She is his singer, the one person whose blood calls to him on a frequency so intense it borders on unbearable. Being near her when she is uninjured and healthy is difficult enough. If she were bleeding, being near her would require a level of self-control that he is not certain he possesses. The week he disappeared from school after that first biology class, he was in Alaska, staying with another family of vampires like his own, trying to get enough distance from her to master himself. He tells her what his family is, and what makes them different from other vampires. The Cullen family does not drink human blood. Carlyle, in his 4 centuries of existence, has developed a set of moral convictions that have driven him to reject the traditional vampire way of life entirely. The family survives on the blood of animals, which does not satisfy the way human blood does, but which allows them to coexist with the human world without causing harm. They refer to themselves, with dry humor, as vegetarians. This choice has cost them something real. Animal blood is to a vampire what a bland and nutritionally adequate but completely joyless diet is to a person who loves food. It sustains but does not truly satisfy. And yet every member of the Cullen family has made this choice, because of who Carlyle is and what he has built around that moral foundation. Bella listens to all of this. She takes it in. And then she does the thing that Edward was perhaps not expecting, which is to simply accept it, to sit with all of it without running, without hysteria, without making it about fear. She looks at him and tells him she is not afraid of what he is. She is afraid of losing him. Chapter 7. A love unlike any othr. What follows is the most tender section of the film, the development of the relationship between Bella and Edward in all its complicated, charged, emotionally intense detail. Edward takes Bella to the Cullen house, a stunning structure of glass and pale wood that sits deep in the trees, open and light in a way that reflects the family's relationship with their environment. Meeting the family is a mixed experience. Esme, Edward's adoptive mother, is genuinely warm and welcoming in a way that feels completely sincere. She is a small, gentle woman who clearly loves her family with a ferocity that the centuries have not diminished. Carlyle is measured and deeply kind, an ancient being who has devoted his extraordinarily long existence to healing and to the project of finding a way for vampires to live without harm. He treats Bella with profound respect and does not make her feel like an intrusion. Emmett is large and loud and good-humored, the kind of personality that fills a room without any apparent effort, and he welcomes Bella with a cheerful bluntness that is somehow more comfortable than careful politeness would have been. Alice is immediately, almost aggressively, in Bella's corner, behaving toward her with the easy warmth of someone who has already decided you are going to be close friends, and is simply waiting for you to catch up. Alice has her own gift. She can see visions of the future, though her visions are contingent on the decisions people make, and can shift as choices change. She has seen Bella's future, and it has made her feel a kinship with this human girl that she embraces fully. Jasper is quieter and more careful, and his gift, the ability to sense and influence the emotions of those around him, makes him acutely aware of the effort it takes to be near a human whose blood carries scent. He is respectful but cautious, and there is a history behind his eyes that speaks of a harder past than the rest of the family carries. And then there is Rosalie, who does not welcome Bella at all. Rosalie is stunning, achingly beautiful in the way that all the Cullens are, and she is cold and overtly disapproving. Her hostility toward Bella is not personal in the way a human's hostility might be. It is existential. Rosalie sees Bella's presence as a risk, a human who knows what they are, an unpredictable variable in the carefully maintained life the family has built. She resents the disruption and is not interested in hiding that resentment. Despite Rosalie's coldness, Bella feels something in the Cullen house that she has rarely felt anywhere. A sense of being in the right place. These strange, ancient, beautiful creatures who have chosen to live as something better than their nature demands feel, in some inexplicable way, like people Bella could belong with. Edward and Bella spend more and more time together. He comes to her room at night and watches her sleep, which in the context of a normal human relationship would be alarming, but which in the context of this story reads as an act of devotion from someone who does not sleep himself, and who simply cannot bear to be away from her. He tells her she talks in her sleep, that she says his name. He memorizes everything about her. He plays piano for her in the Cullen house, a gift he has cultivated over decades of solitary practice. And the music he makes is breathtaking and deeply sad in the way that music made by someone who has lived through too much time often is. Their relationship is charged at every moment with the awareness of what they are to each other, and what stands between them. Edward is a vampire. Bella is human. Every moment they spend together, every touch, every almost kiss, Every instance of Edward being close enough to breathe her in exists alongside the knowledge of what he is capable of, and what it costs him to hold himself back. The tension between them is not simply romantic. It is elemental. It is the tension of someone holding a flame in their bare hands and choosing, every single second, not to let it burn them. Chapter 8. The MEADOW. The meadow scene is the emotional heart of the film. Edward takes Bella to a clearing in the forest where the sun breaks through, and it is here that he shows her what sunlight does to him. He steps into the light and his skin catches it and scatters it, and he stands there in all his inhuman, impossible beauty and tells her what he truly is. This moment is not played as horror. It is played as revelation. Edward in the sunlight is extraordinary, and Bella does not recoil. She reaches out and touches his face, his arm, the crystalline surface of his skin in the light, and the expression on his face when she does this is so nakedly vulnerable that it is almost painful to look at. He has hidden what he is for over a century. He has never let anyone see him in the sunlight. And now this girl is standing in front of him, touching his face, and looking at him not with fear or revulsion, but with something that looks dangerously close to wonder. He tells her she should be afraid of him. He tells her that every instinct he has is oriented toward her in the most dangerous possible way, that she is the one thing in over a century of existence that has truly tested him. He tells her she has no idea how difficult it is to be what he is and to be near her. And she looks at him steadily, with those brown eyes that give nothing away and everything away at the same time, and tells him that she does not care. That she is not afraid. That he is the only thing, vampire or otherwise, that she has encountered in her life that has made her feel entirely and fully present in the world. This is the moment their love becomes something real and declared rather than something both of them are navigating around. And it is also the moment that Edward understands, perhaps for the first time, the true depth of what he is feeling and what it will cost him. Chapter 9. The NOMADS. Until now, the danger in this story has been internal. The threat has been the tension between what Edward is and what he feels for Bella, the question of whether love and restraint are strong enough to contain something as primal and old as a vampire's hunger. But the external danger arrives on a dark and stormy night in the forest, during a Cullen family baseball game. The Cullens play baseball during thunderstorms because only the crack of thunder can mask the sound of a vampire hitting a ball at full supernatural strength. It is one of the film's most exhilarating sequences, the family in their element, moving at speeds that make them look like beautiful ghosts. The game itself a kind of joyful release of all the power they contain during their carefully controlled daily lives. Bella watches from the sidelines with Alice beside her, and there is a glimpse here of what the Cullen family looks like when they do not have to perform normalcy for the human world. Then the three nomads emerge from the tree line. James, Victoria, and Laurent are vampires without permanent homes or moral constraints. They move through the world hunting as they please, going wherever the scent of blood takes them, answerable to no one and nothing. Laurent is something like the diplomat of the three, measured and formally polite in a way that suggests he has spent enough time around civilized vampires to understand the performance, if not the conviction behind it. Victoria is feral and fast and watchful, with wild red hair and eyes that miss nothing. And James is something else entirely. James is a tracker. His particular gift, the supernatural ability that emerged when he was transformed, is the capacity to hunt. Not simply to be strong or fast or perceptive in the ways all vampires are, but to fix on a target and pursue it with an obsessive, instinct-driven focus that does not stop and cannot be easily deflected. He has been tracking prey for as long as he has been a vampire, and he has never failed to catch what he decided to hunt. The moment James registers the scent of Bella, something changes in him. It is subtle, a flicker behind the eyes, a slight shift in posture, a sharpening of attention that the Cullens notice immediately even if Bella cannot quite read it. Carlyle and James exchange the formal pleasantries of two groups of vampires meeting in neutral territory, but underneath the civility the situation is already decided. James has a target. He will pursue her. And the Cullen family stands directly in his way. The meeting ends without open conflict, but the moment the nomads disappear back into the trees, the Cullen family moves into crisis mode with the precision of people who have survived centuries by making fast decisions in dangerous situations. Chapter 10. RUNNING. The plan is formed quickly. Bella cannot go home. Charlie would be in danger if James tracked Bella there, and Bella would be impossible to protect in a human environment with a human father who does not know what he would be facing. Alice and Jasper will take Bella south, out of state, to Phoenix, where James hopefully will not think to look. The rest of the family will split up and attempt to lead James in the wrong direction, buying time and drawing him away from Bella's trail. Bella has to say goodbye to Charlie, and she has to do it in a way that makes him let her go. She tells him she is leaving, that she cannot live in Forks, that she wants to go back to her mother in Phoenix. She is deliberately unkind, channeling every frustration and unhappiness she can muster to make Charlie believe she genuinely means it, because if he simply accepts her leaving the way he might if she were diplomatic about it, James might not believe there was urgency in her departure. She needs him to be genuinely hurt and genuinely convinced. The scene costs her. Charlie's face when she says these things to him is the face of a man who had been quietly, carefully hoping and who has just had that hope taken away cleanly and without warning. She drives away, and she cries the entire way. Alice and Jasper get Bella to Phoenix and install her in a hotel room, where she waits. Edward is supposed to join them as soon as the rest of the family has done what they can to throw James off the trail. Alice begins having visions, flashes of images that she cannot entirely piece together, involving Bella and a ballet studio, and something going wrong. Alice has seen Bella in a ballet studio before, in her childhood, in home videos. The image does not yet carry the weight of what it will mean. Chapter 11. The trap James is far more intelligent, and far more dangerous, than simply being fast and strong. He thinks. He plans. He has spent centuries hunting prey that tried to escape him, and he has learned that sometimes the most effective approach is not direct pursuit but manipulation. He studies his targets. He looks for what they love, what they fear, and what they cannot walk away from. He finds Renee, Bella's mother. Not to harm her, but to use her. He accesses an old family home video in which Renee can be heard speaking, and he uses that recording to construct a message for Bella. He calls Bella's phone and plays the sound of her mother's voice, distressed, calling Bella's name, telling her to do what this man says. He then tells Bella that he has her mother, that if she wants Renee to survive she needs to come to her old childhood ballet studio alone. Now, without telling the Cullens where she is going, Bella does not hesitate. She cannot. Whatever the rational part of her brain knows about the danger she is walking into, the part of her that is a daughter who has spent her whole life taking care of her mother cannot hear it. She slips out of the hotel while Alice and Jasper are momentarily distracted, takes a taxi to her old dance studio, and walks in alone. The ballet studio is all mirrors and soft light, and James is already there, waiting with the calm confidence of someone who knew she would come. He tells her fairly quickly that her mother is not there, that it was a recording, that the trap worked exactly as he intended. He is not gloating, precisely. He is simply efficient. He has what he wanted. What follows is brutal. James is not interested in a quick resolution. He is genuinely enjoying himself, because to a tracker, the completion of a hunt carries a satisfaction that goes beyond simple feeding. He films what he does on a small camera, because he wants to send the recording to Edward. He wants Edward to watch this. He throws Bella across the room, hard, into the mirrors. He breaks her leg with casual ease. He toys with her the way a cat toys with a mouse, not out of cruelty for its own sake, but because this is simply what he is and what he does. And then he bites her. He sinks his teeth into her wrist and injects venom into her bloodstream, and the burn of it is extraordinary. Vampire venom in a human's blood is the mechanism of transformation. It will spread through the body, changing it cell by cell, remaking it into something no longer human. If allowed to run its course, Bella will become a vampire. If not stopped, she will die from it. Chapter 12. The CHOIC. The fight is fast and devastating in the way that conflicts between supernatural beings always are. Emmett and Jasper arrive moments behind Edward, and Alice is not far behind them. James is powerful and fast and experienced, but he is outnumbered by a family that has spent decades learning to fight together. He is defeated, and Emmett and Jasper destroy him so completely that no part of him remains. Victoria, watching from the periphery, sees the outcome and runs. She is fast, and she gets away. This will matter later. But all of that is secondary to what Edward finds when he reaches Bella. She is on the floor of the ballet studio, bleeding from her wrist, her leg broken, her body shutting down from the combination of physical trauma and the venom spreading through her bloodstream. She is burning. Vampire venom does not kill quickly. It burns through the body over hours, remaking it from the inside out, and the pain of it is described in the Twilight mythology as the worst agony a human being can experience. Edward kneels over her and understands immediately what he has to do and what it will cost him. The venom must be extracted from the wound. The only way to do that is to draw it out by mouth. To suck the venom out of Bella's wrist, Edward must put his mouth to her blood. The blood of the person whose scent has called to him more powerfully than any other in over a century. The blood that has been the ultimate test of his self-control every single moment since he first met her. He must taste it, not just smell it, and then he must stop. He must exercise a degree of control so absolute and so complete that it goes beyond anything he has ever had to do, while she is right there, bleeding, warm, everything his nature has wanted from the moment he first encountered her. He does it. He takes her wrist, and he draws the venom out, and Carlyle's voice on the phone is a lifeline, talking him through it, telling him when it is enough, telling him to stop. And Edward stops. He pulls back. He looks at her with eyes that tell the whole story of what that just cost him, and he stops. Bella loses consciousness. Chapter 13. AFTRMATH. Bella wakes up in a hospital. She is alive. She is human. Her leg is in a cast, her wrist is bandaged, and her mother is there, warm and tearful and relieved. Renee never knew anything was wrong until it was over, and Bella looks at her mother's face and feels the full weight of how much she loves her and how close she came to never seeing that face again. Edward is there too, quiet and present, and their reunion is gentle and full of things unsaid. He is clearly shaken in a way he is working to contain. What he did in the ballet studio, stopping himself when he did, is not something he took lightly or found easy, and the fact that he succeeded has not made the memory of it any less vivid for him. Charlie arrives, and the look on his face when he sees Bella alive is the face of a man who was not prepared for how much he stood to lose. They do not make a big scene of it, because either of them is built for big scenes. But something settles between them, something that says that the goodbye in Forks was not real and that the life they were building together is still intact. There is a conversation between Bella and Edward in the hospital room that carries the full weight of everything they have been through. Bella, coming out of everything that has just happened, is more certain than ever that she wants to be with Edward permanently. She does not want the mortality that separates them to continue separating them. She tells him she wants to become a vampire. She wants the transformation. She wants forever. Edward refuses. Not because he does not love her. Not because he does not understand why she is asking. But because he has thought about what it means to take away her humanity, her warmth, her life, her ability to exist in sunlight and eat food and grow old, and all the things he has watched human beings have for over a century while he remained unchanged. He does not want to be the one who takes that from her, even if she is asking him to. The argument is left unresolved, a thread of tension that will run through every story that comes after this one. Chapter 14. The Prom and the Promise of DNGR. The film concludes on a night that is beautiful and bittersweet in equal measure. Edward takes Bella to the Forks High School prom. She arrives in a dress, her legs still in a cast, and he leads her in a slow dance on a candlelit gazebo outside the main venue. They move together with that same quality of charged, complicated intimacy that has defined every moment between them, the awareness of what they are to each other, and what stands between them always present but not, for tonight, pressing. Bella leans against him and tells him again, quietly, that she wants to be with him forever. Edward responds by pressing his lips to her neck, the place where a vampire bites, and the gesture is unbearably tender and unbearably loaded at the same time. He is saying yes with the gesture and no with the words, and both things are completely true. He cannot imagine taking this from her. He cannot imagine living without her. Both of those things are simply, irrevocably real. They do not see what the camera reveals to the audience as the scene draws to a close. In the shadows at the edge of the venue, watching, with red hair catching the low light and eyes full of cold and deliberate fury, is Victoria. James is gone. But Victoria is not. And Victoria remembers everything. The story of Twilight ends here, but it ends with the full knowledge that the story is not over. The love between Bella and Edward is real and established and powerful, the kind that changes people permanently. But the world they are moving through is dangerous in ways that have only just begun to reveal themselves, and the choice that hangs between them, whether Bella becomes what Edward is or remains what she is, will drive every chapter of what comes next. That is the complete and full story of Twilight, the 2008 film that captured the hearts and imaginations of an entire generation. A story about love that defies every boundary, sacrifice that asks everything of the people making it, and the question of whether what we feel for someone can be stronger than what we are by nature. It is a story that did not end in that ballet studio or at that prom, but those chapters are stories for another day. Twilight, 2008, Complete Light History of the Actors Kristen Stewart, Bella Swan. Early life and childhood. Kristen James Stewart was born on April 9, 1990, in Los Angeles, California. She was raised in a household that was deeply embedded in the world of entertainment, though not in the glamorous, red carpet sense that the word Hollywood typically conjures. Her father, John Stewart, worked as a stage manager and television producer for networks including Fox. Her mother, Jules Mann Stewart, was a script supervisor originally from Australia. Growing up in such an environment meant that Kristen was surrounded by the mechanics of filmmaking from a very young age, not the celebrity side of it, but the working, practical, behind-the-scenes reality of how films and television shows are actually made. She had an older brother named Cameron, and her family also adopted 2 more brothers over the years. The household was creative, busy, and grounded in the craft of storytelling rather than the pursuit of fame. Kristen grew up in the Woodland Hills neighborhood of Los Angeles, and by most accounts she was a tomboy from her earliest years. She preferred jeans and sneakers to dresses, preferred sports and activity to anything sedentary, and had very little interest in the social politics that consume most young girls growing up. She was not particularly interested in fitting in. She had a restless, independent energy from childhood, a quality that would later define many of the characters she chose to play and the way she carried herself in public life. Her entry into acting came not through any grand ambition on her own part, but through a relatively mundane set of circumstances. When she was around 8 years old, a talent agent saw her performing in a school Christmas play and was sufficiently impressed to suggest she pursue professional acting. Her parents, both professionals in the industry, understood what that path involved and supported her without pushing her. Kristen began attending auditions and quickly demonstrated that whatever it was she had in that school play was not a fluke. Early career Kristen Stewart's professional career began when she was just 10 years old, with a small uncredited role in the film The 13th Year in 1999. But her first significant role came in 2001 when she was cast in the thriller The Safety of Objects, in which she played a young girl navigating the aftermath of family trauma. She was 11 years old during production, and her performance demonstrated a maturity and emotional intelligence that was remarkable for someone her age. The role that first brought her to wide public attention came in 2002 with the release of Panic Room, directed by David Fincher. She was cast alongside Jodie Foster, playing Foster's daughter in a tense, claustrophobic thriller about a mother and daughter trapped inside a fortified safe room while burglars attempt to break in. Being directed by David Fincher, one of the most demanding and meticulous directors in Hollywood, at the age of 11 was an extraordinary experience for any young actor. Fincher's process is famously exhaustive, involving dozens of takes and an obsessive attention to detail, and Kristen held her own throughout the entire production. The film was a major commercial success, and critics noticed the young actress sharing the screen with a two-time Academy Award-winning actress without being overshadowed. Following Panic Room, Kristen continued working steadily through her early and middle teenage years, taking on a diverse range of projects that showed a deliberate resistance to being typecast. She appeared in Catch That Kid in 2004, a light children's adventure film that was a deliberate departure from the intensity of Panic Room. She took on the lead role in Speak in 2004, a deeply serious and emotionally demanding film in which she played a teenage girl dealing with the aftermath of sexual assault. The film required her to carry virtually every scene and to communicate enormous emotional weight through largely internal, understated performance. She was 14 years old. The performance was genuinely remarkable, and it established her as someone willing to take on difficult material and capable of handling it with real depth. She continued building her filmography with Zathura, a space adventure in 2005, a fantasy adventure film directed by Jon Favreau. In 2007 she appeared in The Messengers and also filmed Into the Wild, directed by Sean Penn, in which she played a hippie musician who befriends the protagonist on his journey into the Alaskan wilderness. Into the Wild is widely considered one of the finest films of the 2000s, and her performance in it, though she was not the lead, was warmly received. Sean Penn later spoke highly of her as an actress of unusual instinctive talent. By the time she reached 17, Kristen Stewart had a body of work that most adult actors would be satisfied with at the end of a full career. She was not a famous actress in the celebrity sense. She was a respected working actress who had demonstrated repeatedly that she could inhabit complex characters with honesty and intelligence. Twilight and global stardom. The casting of Kristen Stewart as Bella Swan in Twilight in 2008 changed everything about her life and career in ways that she has spoken about in the years since with a mixture of gratitude and complicated feelings. The role was not the kind of prestigious, awards-oriented project she had been gravitating toward. It was a romantic fantasy film aimed at teenagers, adapted from a massively popular novel. But Kristen brought to it everything she brought to every role: complete commitment and a refusal to play anything falsely. Twilight was released in November 2008 and became a phenomenon virtually overnight. The film earned nearly $400 million at the global box office on a budget of approximately $37 million. Kristen Stewart became one of the most famous young women in the world in the space of a few months. The level of attention and scrutiny that came with that fame was something she was wholly unprepared for, and she has been candid about finding it difficult, particularly the invasive nature of tabloid interest in her personal life. She went on to reprise the role of Bella Swan across all 5 Twilight films, with the franchise concluding in 2012. During the same period, she continued to pursue more challenging work outside the franchise. She appeared in Welcome to the Rileys in 2010, playing a runaway teenager in a performance that bore no resemblance to Bella Swan and demonstrated her range clearly. She starred in Snow White and the Huntsman in 2012, playing a warrior version of the fairy tale princess. She appeared in On the Road in 2012, the long-awaited adaptation of Jack Kerouac's novel directed by Walter Salles, in which she played Mary Lou in a performance that required a freedom and wildness very different from anything she had done before. Post-Twilight career and critical renaissance. After the Twilight franchise concluded, Kristen Stewart did something that not many actors in her position choose to do. She turned deliberately away from the mainstream Hollywood path that was available to her and toward independent and art house cinema. She made film after film with major international directors, often in small, difficult, uncompromising projects that her level of fame could have insulated her from ever needing to consider. She starred in Camp X-Ray in 2014, playing a soldier assigned to guard duty at Guantanamo Bay, forming an unlikely connection with a detainee. The film was quiet and serious and bore no trace of commercial calculation. She worked with the French director Olivier Assayas multiple times, starring in his psychological drama The Clouds of Sils Maria in 2014, in which she played a personal assistant to a famous actress played by Juliette Binoche. Her performance earned her the César Award for Best Supporting Actress, making her the first American actress in history to win the French César Award, which is the French equivalent of the Academy Award. This was a significant and genuine critical recognition of her talent at an entirely different level than anything the Twilight franchise had offered. She continued with Assayas in Personal Shopper in 2016, a deeply strange and haunting film in which she played a personal shopper to a celebrity who is also grieving the death of her twin brother and potentially being contacted by his ghost. The film divided audiences but was acclaimed by serious film critics and established her as one of the most interesting and fearless actresses working in world cinema. She starred in Still Alice in 2014 alongside Juliette Moore, who won the Academy Award for her performance. She appeared in Certain Women in 2016, directed by Kelly Reichardt, a minimalist and deeply observed film about women in Montana. She starred in J.T. Lira in 2018, playing a real person in a complex and fascinating story about literary identity fraud. She appeared in Charlie's Angels in 2019, demonstrating she could handle a commercial action comedy with ease and genuine charm. Her most significant achievement in terms of awards recognition came with Spencer in 2021, in which she played Princess Diana during a pivotal Christmas holiday at Sandringham when Diana was beginning to understand the full weight of her unhappiness within the royal family. The performance was universally acclaimed. She won the Critics' Choice Award for Best Actress and received nominations for the Academy Award for Best Actress, the BAFTA Award, and the Screen Actors Guild Award. The performance was described by many critics as one of the finest screen performances in years, a complete physical and emotional transformation that communicated extraordinary things without apparent effort. Personal life. Kristen Stewart's personal life has been subject to enormous and often invasive public interest since the height of the Twilight years. She was in a relationship with her Twilight co-star Robert Pattinson for several years, a relationship that played out under an extraordinary level of public attention. The relationship ended in 2013. In the years following, Kristen Stewart came out publicly as a gay woman, speaking openly about her sexuality and her relationships with women in interviews. She has been with screenwriter Stephenie Meyer since 2019, and the couple became engaged in 2021. She has spoken about her sexuality with refreshing directness and has said she is grateful that the cultural moment allowed her to be open about who she is. She continues to work prolifically and selectively, choosing projects based on their artistic merit rather than their commercial potential, maintaining a career trajectory that is genuinely unusual and genuinely admirable for someone who became famous the way she did. Robert Pattinson, Edward Cullen. Early life and childhood. Robert Thomas Pattinson was born on May 13, 1986, in London, England. He grew up in the Barnes neighbourhood of southwest London, a quiet and relatively affluent area near the Thames. His father, Richard Pattinson, worked as a vintage car importer, a business that required extensive travel and a sophisticated eye for quality and authenticity. His mother, Claire, worked as a booker at a modeling agency. He has two older sisters, Lizzie and Victoria, both of whom pursued careers in music and entertainment respectively. Lizzie Pattinson went on to become a successful backing vocalist. Robert was by all accounts a somewhat unusual child in the best possible sense. He was intelligent and bookish but also deeply interested in music, taking up guitar and piano from a young age and developing a genuine passion for both that would stay with him throughout his life and career. He attended the Tower House School in London as a young boy, and then later Harrow House, and he has spoken in interviews about not being particularly distinguished as a student in the conventional academic sense, though he was clearly intelligent and curious in ways that formal education does not always easily accommodate. He began modeling as a teenager, working briefly in that world before his interest shifted decisively toward acting. His first significant acting experience came through the Barnes Theatre Company, a local amateur theatre group, where he performed in various productions as a teenager. It was in this environment that he first discovered a real affinity for performance, and it was here that his potential was noticed by people who encouraged him to pursue it professionally. Early career. Robert Pattinson's professional acting career began in television, with a small role in the BBC television film Ring of the Nibelungs in 2004, in which he played Giselher. His first significant international exposure came in the same year with his role as Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the fourth film in the Harry Potter franchise. Cedric Diggory is a significant supporting character in that film, a noble and genuinely good-hearted young wizard who participates in the Triwizard Tournament alongside Harry Potter. The character's death at the film's climax is one of the most emotionally resonant moments in the entire franchise. Pattinson was 20 when the film was released in 2005, and his portrayal of Cedric was warmly received. He was handsome in a classically appealing way, genuinely likable in the role, and demonstrated enough presence on screen to make the character's death feel genuinely meaningful. The role introduced him to international audiences on a large scale for the first time, though it was not the kind of role that generates the level of attention that a lead performance does. Following Harry Potter, he worked on a number of projects that showed ambition and range. He appeared in the period drama The Haunted Airman in 2006, playing a World War II RAF pilot suffering from trauma and paranoia, a role that required significant psychological complexity and departure from the straightforward nobility of Cedric Diggory. He appeared in The Bad Mother's Handbook in 2007, and continued developing his craft through a combination of film and theater work. Twilight, global fame. and the experience of sudden celebrity. The announcement that Robert Pattinson had been cast as Edward Cullen in Twilight in 2008 was met with a level of fan hostility that was remarkable even by the standards of passionate reader communities. Twilight fans had spent years building an image of Edward Cullen in their imaginations, a being of perfect beauty, ancient wisdom, and overwhelming romantic intensity. When Pattinson was announced, forums and fan sites erupted with negative reaction. Petitions were signed demanding a recast. His appearance, his demeanor, his entire presence as a public figure was dissected and found wanting by people who had never seen him act. Pattinson has spoken about this experience with considerable good humor in interviews, noting that it was surreal to be hated by so many people who had never met him for a role he had not yet played. He threw himself into the preparation for the role with complete seriousness, reading all of Stephenie Meyer's novels, being given access to the unfinished manuscript of Midnight Sun, and developing a detailed internal understanding of who Edward Cullen was beyond the surface of the romantic archetype. He brought to the role a melancholy and a genuine sense of psychological weight that the character demanded and that a less thoughtful actor might have missed entirely. The film's release in November 2008 transformed his life absolutely and overnight. The fan reaction that had been negative before the film became an inverse tsunami of devotion after it. He became one of the most photographed and most discussed celebrities in the world in a matter of weeks. He has spoken at length in various interviews over the years about how disorienting and genuinely difficult that level of sudden fame was, describing the period as one of real psychological strain. He could not go anywhere without being recognized and surrounded. His private life became public in ways he had not anticipated and did not particularly welcome. He completed the entire Twilight saga, appearing in all 5 films through Breaking Dawn Part 2 in 2012. During this period, he also worked consistently on projects outside the franchise, demonstrating early a determination to be seen as a serious actor rather than simply a franchise star. The artistic reinvention. What Robert Pattinson has done with his career since the conclusion of the Twilight franchise is one of the most deliberate and successful artistic reinventions in recent Hollywood history. He made a series of choices after Twilight that were so consistently uncommercial and so consistently excellent that they fundamentally changed how the film industry and serious film culture perceived him. He starred in Remember Me in 2010, a romantic drama that showed he could carry a mainstream narrative film with genuine emotional intelligence. He starred in Belle Ami in 2012, playing a manipulative social climber in 19th-century Paris, a role that deliberately subverted his romantic hero image. He appeared in Cosmopolis in 2012, directed by David Cronenberg, one of the most original and demanding directors working in world cinema. Cosmopolis is a deeply strange and intellectually rigorous film in which Pattinson plays a billionaire spending a day crossing New York in his limousine, and the film requires him to deliver long, complex, philosophically dense dialogue for extended sequences. His performance was acclaimed by critics who had previously dismissed him as a pretty face in a teen franchise. He continued working with directors of serious artistic reputation. He appeared in The Rover in 2014, a brutal and minimalist Australian post-apocalyptic film directed by David Michôd, opposite Guy Pearce. He starred in Maps to the Stars in 2014, another Cronenberg collaboration. He appeared in The Lost City of Z in 2016, a beautifully made period adventure film. He worked with director James Gray on Ad Astra in 2019, opposite Brad Pitt, but the two performances that truly crystallized his status as one of the finest actors of his generation were in films made within a year of each other. In The Lighthouse in 2019, directed by Robert Eggers and shot in stunning black and white on an almost square aspect ratio, he played a young lighthouse keeper stranded on a remote island with a domineering older keeper played by Willem Dafoe. The film is a hallucinatory, claustrophobic, genuinely terrifying descent into madness and mythology, and Pattinson's performance is extraordinary. It is physically fearless, emotionally unguarded, and technically brilliant. Critics who had spent a decade underestimating him were forced to reckon with the fact that he was something rather more significant than they had given him credit for. I and the devil all the time. In 2020, he played a corrupt and predatory preacher in a mid-century American Gothic ensemble film, delivering one of the most entertainingly menacing supporting performances in recent memory. He transformed his voice, his physicality, and his entire presence for the role. Then came the announcement that changed everything in the most public possible way. Robert Pattinson was cast as Bruce Wayne, Batman, in Matt Reeves' The Batman, released in 2022. The reaction to this announcement echoed the Twilight casting announcement almost exactly, with fans immediately declaring the casting a disaster. He had been through this before. He trusted the process. The Batman was released in March 2022 to enormous critical acclaim and commercial success, earning nearly $800 million at the global box office. His performance as a younger, more damaged, more obsessive Bruce Wayne was praised as one of the best screen portrayals of the character in the franchise's long history. A sequel is in development. Personal life. Robert Pattinson's personal life has been considerably more private than his professional life, which is almost certainly a deliberate choice made in response to the invasive attention of the Twilight years. His relationship with Kristen Stewart during and after the Twilight franchise was one of the most intensely covered celebrity relationships of the late 2000s and early 2010s. The relationship ended in 2013. He was subsequently in a relationship with singer F.K. Twigs from 2014 to 2017. He has been in a relationship with model and artist Suki Waterhouse since around 2018, and the couple had their first child together in 2024. He lives primarily in London and maintains a level of privacy about his personal life that is at some odds with the level of fame he carries. He continues to balance large commercial projects with smaller, artistically ambitious work, maintaining a career that is genuinely unusual in its combination of box office power and critical respect. Taylor Lautner. Jacob Black. Early life and childhood. Taylor Daniel Lautner was born on February 11, 1992, in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was raised in a family that was by no means connected to the entertainment industry, which makes his path to global fame all the more remarkable. His father, Daniel Lautner, worked as an airline pilot for a regional carrier. His mother, Deborah, was a software developer. He has a younger sister named McKenna. The family eventually relocated to Santa Clarita, California, which placed them within reach of the Los Angeles entertainment industry, though that was not initially the purpose of the move. Taylor's path into the world of performing began through martial arts rather than acting. He began training in karate at the age of 6 and showed an immediate and exceptional aptitude for it. He was not simply good at karate in the way that many athletic children are good at the activities they pursue. He was prodigiously talented, the kind of talent that coaches recognize immediately as something categorically different from ordinary ability. He began competing at a very high level while he was still a small child. He came to the attention of martial arts champion and trainer Mike Chat when he was around 7 years old, and Chat took him on as a student. Under Chat's instruction, Taylor's skill developed rapidly. He began competing in national and international martial arts competitions and won a series of championship titles. He became a junior world forms champion, a junior world weapons champion, and accumulated a collection of competition victories that was remarkable for someone his age. His performances at tournaments and competitions were athletic, precise, and entertaining in a way that went beyond pure technical skill into something more like artistry. Mike Chat, who was also an actor, recognized that Taylor's combination of physical ability, natural charisma, and comfort in front of an audience might translate into acting, and he encouraged Taylor and his family to explore that possibility. Taylor began attending auditions. Early career Taylor Lautner's first professional acting work came in television commercials and small television roles in the early 2000s. He made appearances in various television series, and in 2005 he had a recurring role in the Nickelodeon series The Bernie Mac Show. He also appeared in the comedy film Cheaper by the Dozen 2 in 2005, in a supporting role that gave him his first experience of feature film production. His first significant leading role in a feature film came with The Adventures of Shark Boy and Love Girl in 3D in 2005, directed by Robert Rodriguez. He played Shark Boy, a young boy raised by sharks who possesses superhuman physical abilities. The film was aimed at children and was not a critical success, but it was a genuine commercial hit and introduced Taylor Lautner to a young audience on a wide scale. His physical abilities and natural energy came through clearly on screen, and the role demonstrated that he could carry a film as a lead. Twilight and the transformation. When Taylor Lautner was cast as Jacob Black in the first Twilight film, he was 16 years old, and his role was relatively modest. Jacob Black in the first film is a warm, friendly presence, a young man from the Quileute Reservation who clearly has feelings for Bella but whose role in the larger story has not yet been revealed. Taylor played the character with natural ease and genuine likability, but the role was not the kind that generates enormous attention. What happened between the first and second Twilight films is one of the most dramatic physical transformations in recent Hollywood history. In Stephenie Meyer's second novel, New Moon, Jacob Black becomes a werewolf and his role in the story expands enormously. He becomes the second great romantic force in Bella's life, an earthy, passionate, deeply human counterpoint to the cool, complicated, vampire world of Edward Cullen. The role required a very different physical presence than the slight 16-year-old who had appeared in the first film. Summit Entertainment was reportedly considering recasting the role with an older, physically more imposing actor. Taylor Lautner, learning of this possibility, threw himself into one of the most intensive physical transformation programs that any young actor has undertaken. He worked with personal trainers obsessively, redesigned his diet completely, and over the course of roughly a year added an extraordinary amount of lean muscle mass to his frame. He went from being a slim teenager to being a genuinely physically imposing young man, and he did it through work that was by all accounts genuinely grueling. The transformation was convincing enough that Summit Entertainment kept him in the role, and when New Moon was released in 2009, the sight of Taylor Lautner's physical transformation became one of the most talked about elements of the film. He was 18 years old, and he had the physique of someone who had been training professionally for years. The film earned over $700 million at the global box office, and Taylor Lautner became one of the most recognizable young actors in the world. He continued the role through Eclipse in 2010 and Breaking Dawn Parts 1 and 2 in 2011 and 2012. The debate between Team Edward and Team Jacob that ran throughout the franchise's cultural life kept Taylor Lautner at the center of enormous public attention throughout this period. He was a genuine phenomenon, young, physically extraordinary, naturally charming, and the subject of a level of fan devotion that was matched only by his Twilight co-stars. Post-Twilight career. Taylor Lautner's post-Twilight career followed a more difficult path than those of his two main co-stars, and he has spoken about this with considerable honesty in more recent years. The physical archetype that made him famous as Jacob Black was also limiting in terms of the range of roles he was naturally considered for, and the transition from franchise star to working actor in a wider range of material proved challenging. He starred in Abduction in 2011, a thriller in which he played a young man who discovers his parents may not be who he thought they were. The film was not well received critically, though it had a modest commercial performance. He appeared in Grown Ups 2 in 2013 in a small comedic role. He starred in the action comedy Tracers in 2015. The years between the end of Twilight and the mid-2020s were quieter professionally than the heights of the franchise years. But Taylor Lautner demonstrated in interviews and public appearances that he was someone with a genuine sense of perspective about his career and his life. He did not seem embittered by the fluctuations in his professional fortunes, speaking about the Twilight period with warmth and gratitude while being honest about the adjustment of returning to a more ordinary professional life after years of extraordinary fame. He has found a significant audience in recent years through social media, particularly through collaborative videos with his wife Taylor Lautner, whom he married in 2022. His online presence has introduced him to a new generation of audiences and generated a fresh wave of public affection for him. Personal life: Taylor Lautner married Taylor Dome, a nurse who he had been dating for several years, in a private ceremony in November 2022. The couple have been open and warm about their relationship in various public appearances and social media content. He has spoken about the importance of his faith and his family in grounding him through the extraordinary experience of Twilight fame and its aftermath. Billy Burke, Charlie SWN. Early life and career: Billy Burke was born on November 25, 1966, in Bellingham, Washington, a detail that carries a pleasing geographical symmetry given that the Twilight films are set in the state of Washington. He grew up in a working-class family and developed an interest in both acting and music from a young age. He moved to Los Angeles to pursue an acting career and spent many years building a career in television and film through consistent, professional work rather than any single breakout moment. He appeared in numerous television series and films throughout the 1990s and 2000s, including a recurring role in the television series 24 and appearances in films including Ladder 49 and Fracture. He was a thoroughly professional, reliably excellent character actor who brought genuine depth and authenticity to every role he took, but he had not yet found the role that would bring him to wide public attention. That role was Charlie Swan in Twilight. Billy Burke's performance as Bella's father is one of the most quietly exceptional things in the entire franchise. He plays Charlie with an understated warmth and a beautifully observed social awkwardness that provides the entire human world of the story with its grounding and its emotional believability. He is funny without trying to be, tender without being sentimental, and completely authentic in every scene he inhabits. His chemistry with Kristen Stewart is natural and genuinely moving. Following the Twilight franchise, Billy Burke starred as Miles Matheson in the NBC science fiction series Revolution, which ran from 2012 to 2014. He has continued working steadily in both film and television, maintaining the same professional reliability and consistent quality that has defined his entire career. He is also a musician and has released music as a singer-songwriter, a parallel creative life that he has sustained throughout his acting career. Peter Facinelli, Dr. Carlisle Cullen. Early life and career: Peter Facinelli was born on November 26, 1973, in Flushing, Queens, New York. He grew up in a working-class Italian-American family and developed an interest in acting as a teenager. He studied at the Lee Strasberg Theatre and Film Institute before being accepted into the prestigious acting program at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, where he trained seriously in the craft of acting. He began his professional career in the early 1990s, appearing in television series and small film roles. His early career included appearances in the films Riding in Cars with Boys and Can't Hardly Wait, and he built a steady resume through the late 1990s and early 2000s. He had a significant role in the television series Damages and is perhaps best known outside of Twilight for his long-running role as Dr. Fitch Cooper in the Showtime medical drama Nurse Jackie, which ran from 2009 to 2015. His performance as the charming, complicated, and frequently compromised doctor in that series was warmly received and demonstrated his considerable range as a dramatic actor. His portrayal of Carlisle Cullen in the Twilight franchise is the role for which he is most widely recognized globally. He brought to Carlisle a quiet authority and genuine moral conviction that the character required, making believable the idea of a vampire who has devoted centuries to healing rather than harming. The character is the moral center of the entire Cullen family, and Peter Facinelli's performance established that center with integrity and warmth. He has been married twice, first to actress Jenny Garth from 2001 to 2013, with whom he has 3 daughters, and subsequently to actress Lillian Harrison, whom he married in 2021. Nikki Reed, Rosalie Hale. Early life and career. Nikki Reed was born on May 17, 1988, in Los Angeles, California. Her early life was marked by significant personal difficulty. Her parents divorced when she was very young, and she grew up navigating a complicated family situation. She became close friends with director Catherine Hardwicke, who was a friend of her father's, when she was a teenager. It was this relationship with Hardwicke that led to one of the most remarkable debut performances in recent cinema. When Nikki Reed was 13 years old, she co-wrote the screenplay for the film 13 with director Catherine Hardwicke. The film, made in 2003, was a raw and unflinching portrait of teenage girls caught in a spiral of bad decisions, peer pressure, and self-destruction. Nikki Reed co-wrote it based largely on her own experiences, and she also starred in the film in a supporting role. The film was critically acclaimed and brought significant attention to both Hardwicke and Reed as creative forces. Her Twilight casting as Rosalie Hale brought her to global attention. She played Rosalie's cold beauty and barely concealed hostility with considerable skill, making the character's disapproval of Bella feel motivated and real rather than simply villainous. Her role expanded in the later films of the franchise, particularly in Eclipse, where Rosalie's backstory is explored in depth. Following Twilight, Nikki Reed continued acting in various projects and also developed interests in sustainable fashion and environmental advocacy. She married actor Ian Somerhalder in 2015, and the couple have a daughter together. She has used her platform to advocate for environmental causes and has launched a sustainable jewelry line. Ashley Green, Alice Cullen. Early life and career. Ashley Green was born on February 21, 1987, in Jacksonville, Florida. She grew up in a military family and moved several times during her childhood before her family settled in Florida. She developed an early interest in performing and moved to Los Angeles at 18 to pursue an acting career, initially working as a model and auditioning for acting roles. Her career before Twilight was built on small television appearances and minor film roles, and she had not yet had a significant breakout moment when she was cast as Alice Cullen. Her portrayal of Alice, the bright, visionary, fiercely loyal smallest member of the Cullen family, became one of the most beloved elements of the franchise. Alice's gift of seeing the future, her genuine joy in Bella's presence, and the character's warmth and intensity were all conveyed with real skill and genuine charm by Green. She has continued working in film and television since the franchise concluded, appearing in various projects and maintaining a public profile through her work and her personal life. She married producer Paul Curry in 2018. Kellen Lutz, Emmett Cullen. Early life and career. Kellen Lutz was born on March 15, 1985, in Dickinson, North Dakota, and grew up as one of 6 brothers in a large family that moved several times during his childhood. He eventually made his way to Los Angeles and began modeling, which led to acting opportunities. His physical presence is immediately and undeniably striking, and he built a career in the entertainment industry that drew on that physicality while also developing genuine acting ability. His role as Emmett Cullen in Twilight suited him perfectly. Emmett is the most physically powerful of the Cullen family, good-natured and enthusiastic where some of his family members are more restrained, and Kellen Lutz brought a genuine warmth and humor to the role that made Emmett one of the franchise's most enjoyable supporting characters. Following Twilight, he appeared in various film and television projects, including the action film The Legend of Hercules in 2014, in which he played the titular hero in a role that drew heavily on his physical presence. He has remained active in the industry and maintains a significant social media presence. Kem Gigunde, James' early life and career. Kem Gigunde was born on August 16, 1982, in Tacoma, Washington, another geographical connection to the Pacific Northwest setting of the Twilight story. He grew up in Auburn, Washington, and moved to Los Angeles to pursue an acting career after completing his education. He studied acting and began building his career through television appearances in the early 2000s. He gained significant attention for his role as the antagonist Kevin Volchok in the television series The O.C., which he joined in the 4th season. The role of a charismatic and genuinely threatening villain gave him the opportunity to demonstrate that he could play menace convincingly, and it was this quality that made him an excellent choice for James in Twilight. His portrayal of James is one of the genuinely effective villain performances in the franchise. He brings to the character a predatory intelligence and a genuine cold pleasure in the hunt that makes James feel like a real threat rather than a cartoon antagonist. His work in Twilight led to a role in the action film Never Back Down in 2008, and he has continued working in film and television in the years since. Anna Kendrick, Jessica Stienley early life and career. Anna Kendrick was born on August 9, 1985, in Portland, Maine. She grew up in a family that encouraged her interest in performance from a very early age, and she began performing in theater as a child. She made her Broadway debut when she was just 12 years old, appearing in the musical High Society in 1998, and her performance in that production earned her a Tony Award nomination for Best Featured Actress in a Musical, making her one of the youngest nominees in the award's history. She continued working in theater and transitioned into film and television in the early 2000s. Her film career before Twilight included a significant supporting role in Camp in 2003 and a career-defining early performance in Up in the Air in 2009, for which she received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. She filmed Up in the Air either during or shortly after Twilight, and the two films represented very different aspects of her talent arriving in the public consciousness at the same time. Her role as Jessica Stanley in Twilight is relatively small but is one of the most entertaining aspects of the film. Jessica is chatty, slightly self-absorbed, socially strategic in the way of high school students who are very aware of social hierarchies, and Anna Kendrick plays her with an effortless comic timing that is genuinely funny without ever being unkind. She brings a lightness and warmth to the role that makes Jessica feel like a real person rather than simply a plot device. Following Twilight, Anna Kendrick's career went from strength to strength. She starred in the musical comedy Pitch Perfect in 2012, a film that became a genuine phenomenon and spawned 2 sequels. She starred in Into the Woods in 2014, the Stephen Sondheim musical film directed by Rob Marshall, demonstrating her considerable vocal ability alongside major stars including Meryl Streep. She appeared in the thriller A Simple Favor in 2018, directed by Paul Feig, playing against type and earning some of the best reviews of her career. She starred in and produced the Netflix series Love Life in 2020. She is also a best-selling author, having published a collection of humorous essays titled Scrappy Little Nobody in 2016, which reached the top of the New York Times bestseller list. She continues to be one of the most versatile and genuinely talented performers of her generation, equally at home in comedy, drama, and musical theater. The complete budget, making of, and funny scenes on set. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we are going deeper behind the curtain than we have ever gone before with the Twilight universe. We have already broken down the full story, the complete cast life histories, and everything in between. But today we are talking about something that fans of this franchise absolutely love to dig into, and that is the real story of how this movie was actually made, what it cost, what went wrong, what went hilariously right, and all the moments of chaos, comedy, and creative problem-solving that happened on set that you never saw in the final film. Because what happens in front of the camera is one story, but what happens behind it is often a far more interesting one. So let us get into it, starting with the budget, moving through the making of the film, and then diving headfirst into the funny, chaotic, and completely unplanned moments that happened on set that the cast and crew have been talking about ever since. Part 1. The budget. Making a blockbuster on almost nothing to understand what Catherine Hardwicke and her team accomplished with Twilight. You first need to understand the financial reality they were operating within. Summit Entertainment gave Catherine Hardwicke a budget of $37 million to make the film. That number, on paper, might sound like a reasonable amount of money. But in the context of Hollywood filmmaking, particularly for a film that involves supernatural abilities, wire work, visual effects, and location shooting in the Pacific Northwest during winter, $37 million is an extremely tight budget. For comparison, many mid-level Hollywood productions at the same time were operating with budgets of $80 to $100 million or more. The kinds of blockbuster films that Twilight would go on to compete with commercially were made with resources that dwarfed what Hardwicke was given. What makes the budget situation even more remarkable is the time constraint that came with it. Catherine Hardwicke had fewer than 50 days to shoot the entire film. 50 days to capture every scene, every location, every performance, every effects shot, and every emotional beat of a nearly 500-page novel compressed into a 2-hour film. In the world of mainstream Hollywood filmmaking, that is a genuinely punishing schedule. Major studio films of comparable scale routinely shoot for 100 days or more. 50 days left absolutely no room for error, no room for weather delays, no room for the kind of careful iteration that complex visual sequences demand, and no room for the kind of creative experimentation that directors often rely on when making films in new and unfamiliar territory. The weather in Oregon and Washington, where the film was primarily shot, added an additional layer of difficulty that simply could not have been anticipated or controlled. The production was deliberately scheduled for winter precisely because the story required overcast skies. Forks, Washington, and the world of Twilight is defined by its gray, perpetually cloudy atmosphere. Sunshine is the enemy of the production in the most literal possible sense, because in Stephenie Meyer's mythology, vampires sparkle in direct sunlight, and sparkling requires visual effects work that the budget could barely accommodate. If the sun came out unexpectedly during a scene that was not supposed to involve Edward Cullen in sunlight, the entire setup had to be reconsidered on the spot. The crew was essentially at the mercy of the Pacific Northwest sky every single day of production, and the Pacific Northwest sky is not particularly sympathetic to the needs of filmmakers. The limited visual effects budget had direct and tangible consequences on what the film was able to do on screen. The sparkling skin effect, which is one of the most visually distinctive elements of the Twilight mythology, and one of the things fans most wanted to see translated faithfully from the page to the screen, was used extremely sparingly in the film precisely because each instance of it required visual effects work that cost money the production did not have in abundance. The meadow scene, which is the emotional heart of the film, and the sequence in which Edward steps into sunlight and reveals his sparkling skin to Bella, was created with as much ingenuity and as little money as possible. The effects team had to find creative solutions to achieve the visual within the budget constraints, and the results were controversial among some fans who felt the sparkling was not as dramatic or as beautiful as they had imagined it while reading the books. But given what the production had to work with, it was a genuine achievement of creative problem-solving under financial pressure. The van sequence, which is one of the most important action beats in the entire film, the moment when Edward stops a runaway van with his bare hand and saves Bella's life in a way that reveals his supernatural nature, was filmed with a combination of practical ingenuity and carefully staged physical work that kept the cost manageable. The sequence was broken down into its component parts and filmed in a way that allowed the most expensive and complex elements to be minimized. Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart filmed the initial moment of Edward grabbing Bella, and close-up shots were captured to convey the emotional reality of the scene. Then the van was physically driven to the precise location where it needed to be and positioned so that Robert Pattinson could make contact with it in a controlled way that would read convincingly on camera. It was a low-tech solution to what could have been a very high-tech problem, and it worked because the filmmakers understood that the emotional truth of the scene mattered far more than the technical spectacle of it. Catherine Hardwicke has spoken candidly about a specific and genuinely funny technical problem that emerged during the filming of the baseball sequence. The Cullen family baseball game, which takes place during a thunderstorm in the forest and which is one of the most purely enjoyable sequences in the film, required the cast to move at speeds suggesting supernatural ability. Wire rigs were used to achieve this, allowing the actors to be pulled through the air at speeds no human being could run or jump, and to be lifted off the ground in ways that gave their movements an inhuman quality. The problem was that the film had such a limited visual effects budget that the team could not afford to digitally remove the camera operators and Hardwicke herself from certain shots in the way that a better-funded production would simply have handled in post-production. In at least one instance, Hardwicke and her camera operator found themselves accidentally visible in the frame during the baseball sequence and had to find a practical, in-camera solution to remove themselves from the shot rather than relying on visual effects to clean it up afterward. It is the kind of problem that would never arise on a major studio production with a proper effects budget, and it speaks to the genuinely indie nature of the filmmaking conditions under which Twilight was made. The ballet studio sequence at the climax of the film, in which Bella is cornered and attacked by James before the Cullen family arrives to rescue her, was described by Hardwicke as one of the most technically demanding sequences to film given the budget constraints. Every trick available to the production was deployed to make the scene work, from specific camera angles chosen to maximize visual impact while minimizing the need for expensive effects work, to careful choreography of the fight sequences that allowed the violence to feel brutal and real without requiring elaborate wirework for every moment. The limited budget actually forced a creative discipline on the scene that may have served it well in retrospect. The intimacy and the physical rawness of the sequence, the sense that Bella is genuinely trapped and genuinely in danger, comes partly from the fact that there were no resources to create elaborate distancing effects. Everything had to feel close and immediate and real. Despite all of these constraints, and in some ways because of them, the film earned $393 million at the global box office. The return on investment was staggering. A film made for $37 million that earned nearly $400 million at box offices around the world represents one of the most remarkable financial performances in Hollywood history for a film of its type and era. The entire Twilight Saga franchise, across all 5 films, was made on a combined budget of approximately $401 million and earned a combined total of $3.3 billion worldwide. Those numbers are extraordinary by any measure, and they begin with the first film made on that punishing $37 million budget with 50 shooting days and a director who was essentially making what she herself described as an independent film dressed up as a studio production.